Morning everyone, please sit down. Okay, so today, just some continuation of Men's Health Month. I'm really pleased to see people, just entering into it in various different ways and seeing some of the online Team Movember stuff that Ms. Donaldson's sorting as well, and just caught up on a few videos last night of different jumping jacks and things like that, demonstrated in the dance studio. Mr. Saylor trying to get some serious height on those was interesting. But anyway, today's an important one, okay, and it's to do with mental health and masculinity, and very grateful to Alison Bowden and to Paul and to Bennett for stepping up this morning and putting a presentation together for us. So please welcome Alison Bowden forward.
Hi everyone, my name is Paul, my pronouns are he, him, and I am one of the co-captains of the Stigma Free Club. Morning everybody, my name is Bennett and my pronouns are he, him, and I am one of the members of the Stigma Free Club. And today we are going to talk about men's mental health, human emotions, and the social constructions of masculinity.
Hi, as you all know, my name's Alison, my pronouns are she, her. So we're going to be touching on some really big topics this morning in a very short time. And some of them are difficult topics, so I just encourage you to take care of yourself. If you feel kind of stirred up afterwards, talk to your friends, reach out to an adult. So we're going to start, I'm going to start by talking about mental health. So because it's such a pressing issue, earlier in 2022, the Mental Health Commission of Canada reviewed current research related to men's mental health and suicide, and I'm going to share their key findings. So the first finding, obviously, was that the pandemic affected everybody's mental health. The second finding is that depression is the biggest mental health issue facing men, yet it tends to be underdetected and undertreated. And this is because often it presents really differently. Often when we think of depression, we think of low mood, loss of pleasure in meaningful activities, low motivation, fatigue. However, what they've discovered is that there's a male-type depression which presents with more externalizing type symptoms such as irritability, anger, substance use, risk-taking, and impulsivity. So this has made it harder for men to recognize the symptoms of depression in themselves and less likely to seek help, and more challenging for others to recognize that someone actually needs help. The other serious mental health issue facing men is suicide. So men account for 75% of suicide deaths in Canada, and it's the second leading cause of death for men ages 15 to 39. Suicide is complex and influenced by many factors, so I'm just going to highlight the main risk factors. The first is alcohol or drug use. So using substances is a way to temporarily cope with difficult emotions, and over time this can worsen depressive symptoms and be associated with higher impulsivity and risk-taking. As I mentioned before, depression. So male-type depression is a big risk factor, and men who experience social isolation and loneliness or relationship breakdowns are more likely to experience depression and therefore suicidal thoughts and behaviors. Another risk factor is men who experience social stigma and marginalization or exposure to trauma, abuse, and violence. So not surprisingly, males at the highest risk include Indigenous men, people who are part of the sexual and gender minority, men who are part of racialized groups, and men who work in certain occupations like the military, police, paramedics, fire, and those who perform manual labor. The other important risk factor is living in environments where men are expected or feel pressured to uphold socially constructed ideals of masculinity, such as stoicism, self-reliance, strength, toughness, success, control, and competitiveness. In and of themselves, there's nothing wrong with these ideals. However, if they exist inflexibly and to the exclusion of other healthy ideals, that's where it becomes problematic. Rigid beliefs about masculinity leads to higher rates of anxiety, depression, psychological stress, suicide, and maladaptive coping patterns.
The study also found that there are barriers to getting help. Research confirms that this socially constructed ideal of being a real man limits the willingness of men to seek out help. This is not surprising given the potential negative repercussions such as stigma, feelings of shame or weakness, or the potential to be rejected or marginalized by others. Men are also more likely to drop out of treatment and often wait to access services until the need for support is more serious. There are also gender biases in healthcare that negatively impact men receiving the mental health support they need.
We are now going to show an interview with Andy Pimblett, a UFC fighter, speaking about the loss of a friend to suicide and men's mental health.
Listen, we'll talk fighting secondary, right? Let's use the platform that BT Sport has to continue to spread the message. I know this is going to be upsetting, mate. Firstly, how have you managed to keep yourself together over the last 24 hours before making that walk tonight?
Just had to do it, you know what I mean? I had to stay strong for not just myself, not just everyone around me. Like, some of my mates who are here today, they've come from my mate Ricky's house, who's been sitting with his mum, you know what I mean? They're mentally burnt out more than I am. I'm lucky the fact I wasn't in Liverpool at the time, because I would have been a lot worse at the minute, you know what I mean? It would have hit me a lot harder, but I had bigger things on my mind. I had to focus on my fight, so I didn't really, I had stuff to block it out, you know what I mean? I had to make weight. As I say, I found out at 4 a.m. on Friday morning. I was weighing in 5 hours. I just woke up and just looked at my phone and burst out crying, and I still had to go and do another £2. Just like, oh, what am I doing here? You know what I mean? Why am I even doing this? But that's why I'm doing it. I'm doing it to get in there, to win me fights and to spread the message. You know what I mean? People, as I say, men don't talk enough, lad. Women can go and just speak like, oh, you know what I mean? But men don't, lad. Men have got this stigma where, oh, if I talk like that, I'm a weak man. You're not weak, you're stronger than anyone. If you can go and talk to your mate and say, hey, lad, this is affecting me, you're stronger than anyone. I don't care what anyone says. Like, people think bottling stuff up makes it better. I've been there. When I lost on Cage Warriors years ago and I broke my hand again, and I thought, oh my God, I've turned the UFC down twice. I'm never going to get in the UFC. For about 3-4 months, I was waking up crying every morning, and I'll be honest, if I had the bottle, I probably wouldn't be, you know. I would have done something drastic, and you can't make a split-second decision that'll end everything, and you've got to think about things. And the one thing I always say is you've got to get it off your chest. That's something that I did. I eventually spoke to someone, and as soon as you speak to someone, it feels like a weight lifted off your shoulders. Literally, that is what it was like for me. I was like, oh my God, that feels better. And then I spoke to another friend, I spoke to my dad, I spoke to my fiance, I spoke to my coach, and it got better. And I know that my friend Ricky didn't feel like he could speak to anyone without getting called little girl. That's what we need to get rid of, lad. Mental health awareness is, for men, it's ridiculous. There's no funding in the UK for it either, and no one does anything about it, lad. It's the biggest killer I remember, between like 21 and 45. No one does anything, no one cares. And it's what does me head in more than anything, lad. No one cares about it. Because it's only young men who's asked.
The thing that's evident, your friend was going through an awful amount of pain, but it's the pain that gets left behind as well, which is evident on your face, and I've no doubt that is on his family and friends.
His mum and his sister, lad, I don't know how they're getting through this now. His dad's already passed. His mum and his sister are obviously having a terrible time now, but we're all here for them, all his mates, all the other family, and I'll do whatever I can for them, know what I mean? As I say, I'm getting a charity going for kids, the little baddies, but I need to do something for men's mental health, because it's just killing too many men, lad. No one's doing nothing about it. People are just throwing men by the wayside and no one cares. So if no one else is going to do something, I'm going to have to.
Supposedly, after this interview, the number of men seeking support soared in the UK. There are many other prominent athletes over the past several years who have been speaking out about their mental health struggles and encouraging others to get help.
Okay, so now we have a picture of men's mental health. I'm going to switch the focus entirely and speak about emotion, because they're super important to all of our mental health. So humans, by their very nature, are emotional beings. All of us are wired similarly with an entire neurophysiology inside of us, consisting of neurons, neurotransmitters, hormones, and specific areas of the brain dedicated to our emotional functioning. All mammals have this. Humans process their emotions through psychological, physiological, and neurological mechanisms through which everyday events and stressors are experienced and adapted to and assimilated into human experience. And the word emotion means actually to be stirred up or to be moved. So all day long, things happen to us that stir us up, and they create emotional activation in our bodies. Emotions are basically action potentials that seek expression, and they are instinctual in nature. So emotion has really important functions. They help to grow us up and mature. We have to feel things in order to mature. They motivate us. They help us adapt to things we cannot change. They build resilience, and they help us develop the capacity to have healthy relationships. So just for clarification, feelings are the names that we give emotions when they enter into our consciousness. So it's our subjective appraisal of what is stirred up inside of us. So a feeling is I'm sad, I'm scared, I'm frustrated. So emotional health occurs when we can recognize, feel, and express our emotions in a civilized way. This capacity serves a protective function, reducing the impact of stress both physically and psychologically. Thus, emotion is inextricably tied to psychological well-being and mental health. Not surprisingly, most mental health issues present with difficulty regulating and processing emotions. So what gets in the way of us feeling our feelings? In order to perform their intended functions, emotions need to be felt, but things can get in the way. So we can resist or hide our emotions if they threaten our relationships. We can numb out or distract from our feelings by food, medication, drugs, alcohol, screen and technology overuse. We might not have the right words or vocabulary to express our emotions, or we might lack the experience in doing it. And we definitely need safe places and safe people to help us feel our emotions. So our limbic system has defenses wired in, and we'll retreat from feeling things if the environment is too wounding. So we can go numb. For example, a soldier has to numb their feelings in order to perform and to function in that environment. Ideally, we all have places in our life, though, that we can let our defenses down and we can let our feelings catch up with us. And just to be clear, we cannot selectively numb certain feelings. So losing our caring feelings or can lead to acting in hurtful ways or bullying. So soft hearts are really important for our own growth and maturation and for creating a civilized world. So one difficult thing in our society, emotions are not always valued. Often thinking and reasoning are. Having emotions has essentially been feminized and seen as a sign of weakness. There's not a lot of incentive to feel them, especially if you identify as male. Cultural messages like don't feel are problematic, or only feel or express certain emotions. Traditionally, it was sadness for females and anger for males were kind of the accepted. There's energy underneath all emotion that has to come out, and this activated energy, if not allowed to come out, comes out sideways or gets distorted or pressed down on, all of which are problematic. So it's kind of a bit of an unfair setup, especially for men. So we're essentially saying go and have a full range of human experience, which automatically will stir you up in countless ways, but you can only have a few acceptable emotions or ways of expressing them. So it's kind of like an emotional straitjacket. The truth is we need all of our feelings. For example, feeling sadness, which sometimes means shedding tears, but not always, is hugely important in adapting to things we cannot change, like not being selected for a high-level team or a relationship ending or someone dying. These type of tears that are totally different to tears of an onion actually contain toxins, and getting rid of them helps our brain to figure out how to move forward. For example, live in a world where we didn't make the team, where we can't have that relationship, or that we have to live without a person being in our world. So living in a tear-phobic culture, which we kind of are, impacts our ability to grieve things and adapt to things we cannot change. Essentially, whatever we don't express gets bigger in terms of emotions, and the more room you give it, the less room it takes. So we need to find safe places, people, and outlets for emotional expression. Emotional expression is really important because once we express an emotion, it often resolves and moves through. All right, so there's some possible options. There's many ways to express emotion, but here are some options. I'm not going to read through them. Essentially, anytime we're bringing something from the inside out, that often has emotion tied to it. And often creativity is part of that process. One other important way is words. Obviously, I'm a school counselor, so that's often one way that I work with people. Often people have a lot of relief with just getting words out. So finally, when we can fully express our emotions, their feelings find their opposites. And when we fully feel our sadness, we get an automatic bounce back, and we will naturally experience our happiness. So we get more stability, reflection, self-control, and consideration. So we get more emotional balance when we let ourselves fully feel.
Now you have a deeper understanding of emotion and its relationship to mental health. We are now going to share a video of a movie trailer that speaks to the social construction of masculinity and some of its negative impacts, including mental health issues.
Stop crying. Don't cry.
Stop crying.
Don't cry.
You need to pick yourself up.
Don't be weak.
Always keep your mouth shut.
Nobody likes a tattletale.
Bros, don't let your woman run your life, alright?
Be a man.
Be a man.
Do something.
So man up. Man up. Man up.
Man up. Act like a man.
Be a man.
The three most destructive words that every man receives when he's a boy is when he's told to be a man.
We've constructed an idea of masculinity in the United States that doesn't give young boys a way to feel secure in their masculinity, so we make them go prove it all the time.
Within their peer group culture, each of them is posturing based on how the other boys are posturing, and what they end up missing is what they each really want, which is just that closeness.
In good times, guys are like really close to each other, but when things get a little bit worse, you're on your own.
From middle school, I had 4 really close friends. Once I kind of went into high school, I struggle finding people I can talk to because I feel like I'm not supposed to get help.
Our kids get up every morning. They have to prepare their mask for how they're going to walk to school. A lot of our students don't know how to take the mask off. What is it you don't let people see? Almost 90% of you have pain and anger on the back of that paper.
If you never cry, then you have all these feelings stuffed up inside of you, and then you can't get them out.
They really buy into a culture that doesn't value what we've feminized. If we're in a culture that doesn't value caring, doesn't value relationships, doesn't value empathy, you are going to have boys and girls, men and women go crazy.
I had anger issues in high school. I felt like an outcast.
I've been suspended at least once every year I was here.
We would just look for trouble and just try to fight.
Boys are more likely to act out. They're more likely to become aggressive. Most people miss that as depression, or see it as a conduct disorder, or just a bad kid.
I felt like just giving up on life. You know, I actually had suicide thoughts in my head at 6th grade.
I felt alone for a long time, and I actually thought about killing myself.
Whether it's homicidal violence or suicidal violence, people resort to such desperate behavior only when they are feeling shamed and humiliated, or feel they would be if they didn't prove that they were real men.
If you're told from day one, don't let nobody disrespect you, and this is the way you handle it as a man, respect is linked to violence.
If I can man up, why step down from that, you feel me?
It's like instinct.
So man up. Man up. Man up. Man up.
Act like a man.
Be a man.
Be a man.
For my kids, I was going to end this hyper-masculine narrative here.
So, what are our thoughts and feelings? Well, for me, I agree on mental health being swept under the rug for men far too often. Because as we heard, due to the stigmas that a lot of men are too afraid to reach out, and I remember being in those exact same shoes. So, before coming here, I often faced bullying, and as much as I wanted to talk about my feelings, I kept bottling it up out of fear no one would listen. And as a result, I felt a lot of self-loathing, thinking that most of that was because of myself. And all that eventually reached a boiling point, and I had to speak to someone about it, and that felt like a bunch of weights lifted off my shoulders. So, my point there is bottling things up isn't healthy, And even if it takes a lot of courage to reach out, there are people who are willing to listen.
So for me, what I've come to find in my life growing up is that I do feel a sense that I need to put a mask on, that I need to be tough, that I need to show others that I don't let my emotions get the best of me. I remember when I was in elementary school, back in about grade 1 or so, I cried over getting a bad mark on one of my assignments. And my teacher pulled me aside and told me that boys aren't supposed to cry. I didn't think much of it at the time, but looking back on it now, it really hurts me. I mean, just because I'm a boy, I can't cry? To me, it just seems so unfair that I'll be judged for crying just because I'm a guy. We all feel the same emotions and should be allowed to express them as we please.
Here, statistics show that 40% of people have never spoken to anyone about their mental health. For example, right here, it says 29% are too embarrassed to speak about it, and 20% say they won't because there's a negative stigma on the issue.
So, fortunately, there are programs and resources available to help combat the stigmas surrounding men's mental health and increase access to mental health information, support, and resources. So, one of them is Heads Up Guys. So it's a resource on male mental health created by a psychiatrist out of UBC. There's Movember, which is great resources on mental health and suicide prevention and helping others as well. And then we have the Canadian Men's Health Foundation, Tough Enough to Talk, which is another really good resource. Your family doctor is a great place to go, and a school counselor or outside counselor as well.
In conclusion, it is important that everyone as a whole takes notice of men's mental health. And it's okay to talk about your thoughts and feelings because, as I learned, you are just digging yourself into a deeper hole by not talking about them. And that weight on your shoulders can just come and crush you down. So it's important you push back by talking about your thoughts and feelings, and that weight on your shoulders can be lifted off as a result.
And don't let society pressure you what the true image of masculinity is. Be who you are, and don't let others convince you otherwise. It is important that all of us as boys and men alike don't play into rigid ideas about masculinity, and we create a new and more flexible definition of what being a man truly is.
Remember that to be human is to be stirred up by emotion, and for all of us, emotional health and improved mental health comes with recognizing your feelings, making room for them in ourselves and others, and finding healthy ways to express them. Ask for help if you need it, and pay attention to how your friends are doing and encourage them to get help when needed. Thank you for listening.
So I'm not going to say very much at all because I think I want to let Ms. Bowden and Bennett and Paul's words and images and what you heard stay with you. I could say an awful lot because I believe passionately in what is being done right now and what's happened this morning. Again, as someone who grew up in a different culture, grew up at a different time, I could relate all sorts of experiences of my own that would sort of take away the mask that you see when you look at someone like me. But suffice to say that this is some of the most important important stuff that you'll learn this year. I really believe that, and so take it on board and internalize it and support it as I do. Thanks again. Thank you.
Please stand.